This week's Torah portion, as you know, the Torah portion is Beha'alotecha, and today's reading is very monumental because today we read about the very first journey that the Jewish people took following receiving the Torah at Sinai. Listen, it's easy to get the Torah. It's hard to travel with the Torah. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean literally. I don't mean like it's an awkward carry-on, although maybe also. What I mean is, it's one thing to be in the zone, in that, by the mountain, kind of isolated, but it's another to take it with you out into the world. I'll give you a quick example. It's easy to feel spiritual maybe, in a synagogue. You're in shul, you're around the Torah, you're hanging out in a Jewish place. Or as I like to say, as you know, in a Jewy place. So I think it's a little bit easier to feel connected there. But what about when you walk outside? What about when you go to work? What about when you walking down the street or in the stores? It's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more challenging. So today's reading is all about have Torah will travel. How do we go from Sinai into the world at large, which is not always predicated, not always based on the very same values. Okay, so that's today's discussion. I'm about to share my screen with y'all. That was an awkward, that wasn't my best. All right, I'm going to work on it for next time. Y'all? I don't know. Okay, here we go. Fifth reading, because it's Thursday, cannot contact reCAPTCHA. Who needs reCAPTCHA? What are you talking about? All right, here we go. Fifth reading. SumiChabad.org is going to cooperate. It looks like it is. All right, here we go. It's loading up. Loading. Here we go. That's it. Numbers chapter 10, verse 11. Let's jump right in. I'm going to start reading. On the 20th of the second month in the second year, the cloud rose up from over the tabernacle of the testimony. Now you know, if you were here yesterday, you know that when that cloud rises up, you know what that means. That's a signal for movement. That's when everyone gets mobilized. The cloud's lifted. Gewalt, I'm not ready. I didn't pack. Too late. You got to start marching. You got to start moving. The cloud is on the march. So when did this happen? This happened the 20th day of the second month, ER. So 20th day of ER in the second year. That means the year after the Exodus. So 20 ER 2449 is when this journey happened. First journey away from Sinai. Verse 12. It gets dramatic very soon. The children of Israel traveled on their journeys from the Sinai desert, and the cloud settled in the desert of Paran. That's where they settled. By the way, I just said drama. Oh boy, is there drama. Drama ensues almost immediately. They start traveling. They start fighting. They start arguing. They start kvetching. It all breaks out. It gets kind of interesting. It gets kind of ugly, and plagues break out. Matt was referring a moment ago to a plague that broke out with the meat or the quail. That's again in tomorrow's reading, but all of it is tied into this first journey. Look, things were calm as long as they were settled over there, but once they started moving, it got a little bit hectic. Now, verse 13 clarifies what I've been mentioning all along. This was the first journey at God's bidding through Moses. What does it mean, the first journey? What about the Exodus? What about Egypt? They left Egypt. Yes, that was the first journey from Egypt. But post-Torah, post-tabernacle, having the ark, having the tablets, having the configuration of the encampment, remember, on all four sides, that whole thing, the first journey of that configuration, if you will, happens at this point in time. It was God's bidding, and it was facilitated, of course, through Moshe, the leader. And the Torah, I'm not going to read all these verses. The Torah proceeds to describe how they, what's the word I'm looking for? How they mobilized. So it says that the banner of the camp of Judah went first. Then was the banner of the camp of Reuben. Remember, Yehuda was on the east. The camp of Reuben. Each camp had 3 tribes in it. Remember, there's 4 directions, 3 tribes each, 12 tribes. So first we had mobilization of the eastern tribes, which was known as the camp of Judah. Then we had the mobilization of the southern tribes, known as the camp of Reuben. Then the western tribes, known as the camp of Ephraim. and finally the northern tribes, known as the camp of Dan. And then they mobilized. They got up, everyone got together, and they all started heading out on their travels. Now. Here's where it gets interesting. Because part of this conversation is, hold on. Where does it say 3? Okay. A few things. What happens here in verse 29 is very interesting. Verse 28 says these are the travels of the children of Israel according to their legions, and then they traveled. Okay, so that's how they moved. But verse 29 gets very interesting. I want to highlight a few things. Verse 29 and that discussion, and then I want to highlight verse 33 and that discussion as well. Let's go back to verse 29. Look what happens here. Then Moses said to Hobab, I don't like that English version of his name. It's Chovav in Hebrew, the son of Reuel the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law. So Moses says to his father-in-law as follows, but before we get there, you may know a name change. You might have realized a name change. What was the name of Moshe's father-in-law? Who knows the typical name of Moses' father-in-law? Yeah, there's a Torah portion named after him. It's Yitro. And suddenly here he's called Chovav. Chovav. Why the change? Rashi says that Yisro had many names. He was referred to by many nicknames, and one of them was Chovav. Why Chovav? Chovav is like Chovev, which means beloved or love. Yisro, Moshe's father-in-law, loved the Torah, so he's called Chovav. Okay, so what does Moshe say to him, to his father-in-law? Whatever you call him, there was a dialogue that happened. He said, we are traveling to the place about which the Lord said, I will give to you. I love that line. Basically saying, we're on our way to Israel. Now, little did he know at that point that they were going to get stuck for 40 years. That decree hadn't yet come down. That punishment hadn't yet come down. So he tells his father-in-law, we're about to head to the promised land. This is the land that God promised. Come with us, and we will be good to you. For the Lord has spoken of good fortune for Israel. He says to his father-in-law, stay with us. You came right before the giving of the Torah. You got the Torah with us. You gave advice about judging the people. Don't go. We're starting to travel now. Stay with us. Don't go home. But look what his father-in-law says to him in verse 30. He said to him, I won't go. I won't go with you. Rather, for I will go to my land and my birthplace. Yisro, Moses' father-in-law, says to him, he says, I'm not Jethro. I'm not going with you. I'm not going to the promised land with you. It's been fun. It's been real. Gotta run. Gotta go. This is it. I gotta go back to my land and my birthplace, which was, of course, Midian. Moses, verse 31. Moses said back to his father-in-law, please don't leave us. For because you are familiar with our encampments in the desert, and you will be our guide. That's a bit of a broken sentence there in the English. He's basically telling him, we need you. We need your guidance. We need your advice. You're like an elder statesman. You're a person who's experienced in spiritual matters. You have a love of Torah and a love of Hashem. And you are, in the language of the Torah, in verse 31, in the Hebrew, I just highlighted the Hebrew, V'hayita lanu le'enayim. You will be for us like eyes. You know what that means? You'll be for us like eyes. You're going to be a guide. You'll be our leader. You'll be a help, a visionary here. Verse 32, Moses continues to pitch his idea. And if you go with us, then we will bestow on you the good which God grants us. In other words, it's not only going to benefit us, it's going to benefit you as well. If you come with us, we need you. We need your guidance. We need your advice. You're going to help us. But the truth is, he says in verse 32, we're going to help you also. Because God is blessing the Jewish people. And if you hang around us, you'll also be blessed. You'll also benefit from all this goodness. The Torah doesn't tell us how it ended. The Torah describes the dialogue, Moses' invitation, Yisro's, not refusal, but his, he says, I'll pass. Moses says, no, 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 come with us. And that's where the story ends. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's a debate amongst the sages as to what Yisro actually did. Did he stay with the people? Did he leave? I don't remember the conclusion, but I do know this. The Torah leaves it kind of vague over here without telling us what actually happened. Okay. What is this dialogue really all about? What's the deeper idea here? Look, Yisro, Jethro, Chovav, had advised the Jewish people, had advised Moses about how to judge the people. Which means that, because Moses was judging everybody himself, just as one judge judging an entire nation, millions strong, and it was overwhelming. And Yisro had a vision, his father-in-law had a vision of how to situate this in a way where it eases the burden from Moses and from the people. Both are benefiting, both sides are benefiting. The way this is explained in Kabbalah is that Moses was fiercely dedicated to truth. And he felt if justice, judging the people, if justice requires truth, well then he who has a direct line with God would have the greatest ability to proctor that truth, and therefore he should be the one judging the people all the time, just himself, because of his dedication to truth. But Jethro, had another agenda, and his agenda was shalom, peace, right? Or what's a better word for that in this context? Feasibility, right? You're not going to be able to judge everybody yourself, and they can't be judged by one person. You know how long the lines are at the DMV usually, or a passport when you need to get something from a government place. Imagine if you have millions of people needing to be judged by one person. It's not. So Moses did it because he felt that truth is truth. But Yisro said, his father-in-law said, truth is a wonderful virtue, but you also have another virtue, which is shalom, which is letting people live, giving people a pleasant life and a pleasant experience. And that shalom is fostered when you have multiple judges that can adjudicate the cases, and there are lower courts and higher courts, and not everything has to be brought to you. You'll be the supreme justice of the land. Fine. But we're going to have lower courts. And Moses said, yes, I agree. Which tells us something fascinating. That as incredible as Moses is, not one person can have every perspective. That's the way it is. One person has one perspective. Now a Moshe has certainly a divine perspective. But nonetheless, notwithstanding that divine perspective, because of that connection that he had with God, that special connection, the special relationship that he has with Hashem, notwithstanding all of that, the reality is that Moses can use somebody, can benefit from someone who has a bit of a different perspective, who sees the people, on a more, let's say, human level, on a more humanistic level, and understands their needs and their challenges and their desires, etc. Which tells us, when it comes to judging, you can judge based on the books, strict justice, strict truth, or you can judge in a way that takes into account the situation, the conditions of the individuals that are before you. And it's a very hard line to follow, very hard line to walk, to balance between justice, truth justice, and somewhat of a compassionate take. But that's the challenge of a judge. It says tzedek, tzedek tirdov, justice, justice you shall pursue. The first justice is truth. The second justice, tzedek, is like tzedakah, which means kindness or righteousness or compassion. So you have to balance both. Moshe was balanced by his father-in-law. We understand now, perhaps in a deeper sense, why Moses was so hesitant to see his father-in-law go. I may have said father, I meant father-in-law. Why Moses was hesitant to see his father-in-law go and to just allow him to go back home. He wanted him with him. He said, you will be our eyes, you will be our eyes on the ground. And that le'enayim, that's very significant. Because Moses certainly has his own vision, but the point is not everyone can have the same perspective. And we benefit from others' perspectives. Okay, let's, just to illustrate this. Actually, I don't know how it's going to work with you. Okay, I'm raising a hand. Which side is the hand being raised to you? Right or left?
Left.
Left. I'm raising my right hand, but you're seeing left. That's the way it is in life, right? One person's right is the other person's left. It's the way it is. So the same thing with Moshe. Moshe sees it one way, but his father sees it a different way. Okay, let's continue now and let's explore. So we understand the need for balance and the need for other perspectives. Even a Moses can use someone else with a different perspective. Now let's look at. Oh, and of course the lesson for us is we shouldn't always make our own decisions without consultation. We should have people that we trust, people that see things differently, that we can converse with, bounce ideas off of, and then make healthy decisions. Next, verse 33. This is so beautiful. I love this teaching. It says, they traveled a distance of 3 days from the mountain of the Lord, Mount Sinai. And the ark of the Lord's covenant traveled 3 days ahead of them to seek for them a place to settle. The cloud of the Lord was above them by day when they traveled from the camp. Okay, let's unpack this. There's 2 insights that I want to share on verse 33. Number one, they traveled 3 days from the mountain. The commentaries say that there's another way to understand this verse, completely non-literal, but in a way that speaks to all of us and and our lives. What is it? Shabbat is the mountain. In this verse, on a deeper level, Shabbat is the mountain. And every Shabbat, or the week, is comprised of 2 segments of 3 days. We have 3 days that were the first 3 days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, are days in which we're coming from the mountain, from Shabbat, and we're living off of the inspiration from that previous Shabbat. And already the next 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, are the days that are leading up to the next mountain, to the next Shabbat. So, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we're feeding off of the previous Shabbat's energy. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're prepping ourselves and building up the energy for the upcoming Shabbat. And the truth is, this is true in a very practical way. If we have a good Shabbat, and I mean a good Shabbat on all levels, physically, spiritually, right, emotionally, psychologically, we have a healthy Shabbat, we can ride that inspiration for a few days. It helps us get through the week, the beginning of the week. And when that inspiration wears off, Wednesday, right? It's kind of like the middle of the week. Perfect. Now it's time to look forward to the next Shabbat. We start maybe thinking more about shopping for Shabbat or picking up food, whatever it is. What are we going to make for Shabbat? Who are we going to have over for Shabbat as guests? We start thinking about when everything is healthy and safe, obviously. So, we start thinking about the following Shabbat. So all week we're living with Shabbat. So each week, the commentaries say, is either traveling from the mountain or traveling to the mountain. Okay, just a small insight about that and about how we can live our lives in a way that's surrounded by the inspiration of Shabbat. The final point I want to talk about is this last half of verse 33, where it says, and the ark of the Lord's covenant traveled 3 days ahead of them to seek for them a place to settle. That means that when they travel, just to be very clear here, when they would travel through the desert, through the wilderness, the ark would be 3 days ahead of the people. And in the language of the Torah, what was the point of this? Lasur lahem menucha, to find a place for them to settle. Or to settle the place before them, to get things ready. So the ark went before them. Now what was in the ark? Okay, I just kind of mentioned it, the Torah. Why the Torah? Because in the ark were the tablets. The tablets had the 10 Commandments, 10 Commandments being, on some level the core of Torah. All of the 613 mitzvot derive on some level from these 10 Commandments or are somehow related to the 10 Commandments. So the ark, which has the tablets with the 10 Commandments, symbolizes Torah. What's the deeper message here? The deeper message is Torah is always ahead of its time. Torah always travels in front of us. Torah always anticipates human dilemmas, human confusion, human challenges. Torah has predicted. When I say predicted, I don't mean like Nostradamus. I mean, Torah has anticipated all of the questions that human beings have had throughout history. And there's some lesson in Torah that can apply to every situation. Torah is always ahead of its time. Many people, unfortunately, look at Torah as old-fashioned and outdated. Many people, unfortunately, that maybe haven't yet had the opportunity to study Torah in its full richness. Maybe they look at Torah as a bunch of fairy tales and Baba Mises. Yeah, Adam and Eve and snakes, talking snakes, and apple trees that are deadly, and Noah's Ark and floods and animals on a raft. I mean, come on, you're kidding me? Yeah, sure. This is Torah. Wonderful. Enjoy your Torah. I'm going to deal with something real. I mean, a lot of people feel like that. A lot of people have that perspective on the Bible. Unfortunately, right? So it's only when, and that's, I've mentioned in many classes, that's because the way we study Torah as children is in a very simplistic way. And unfortunately, for some people, many people, their Jewish education ends in childhood, and they don't have the opportunity for whatever reason, or they haven't taken the opportunity to study Torah as an adult with a mature mind and a mature approach. So we're left with the fairy tale side of it, or with what seems like fairy tales, without the meaning, without the value. So people look at Torah as like some old-fashioned, quaint stories, antiquated stories that don't really have much to say for right now. When this couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is that far from being a bunch of baba mices, a bunch of fairy tales, far from being something antiquated, something out of touch and old-fashioned, on the contrary, Torah is absolutely relevant, more relevant than ever. Right? Torah is more timely than ever before. Torah speaks to 2020 dilemmas, the issues that we are facing right now. Show me an issue, and I can show you what Torah says about it. I don't mean me, but one could find something in Torah on every issue. And so, my friends, we have to know this. The Ark, just like it was then, the Ark traveled 3 days ahead of them, so too today. The Ark, the Torah, is always ahead of its time. Lasur lahem menucha, to settle a place for them, to seek out a place to settle, to answer our dilemmas. Menucha, the last word, to settle, is menucha. Menucha means peace, tranquility. Torah helps us arrive at a place of peace and navigate the very turbulent waters of this world, of life itself. So, what helps us get through life? It's the Torah. Torah is ahead of its time. We should never think the Torah is outdated. Torah is always ahead of its time. Okay, this takes me to the end of what I wanted to share today. We shared a few different ideas. Number one, we talked about the first journey post-Sinai, and we spoke about how there's a major lesson for us in life, and that is, it's easy to feel holy around the mountain. It's much harder to inject holiness when you're traveling away from the mountain. So in spiritual context, whether it's synagogue, at the time of prayer, or in these sessions of Torah study, it's easy to feel connected. But when you step out of these spaces, when you begin traveling, that's when you really need to carry the message with you, because then you can implement it and then it can really have an effect. That was one point. Next point we talked about was the conversation between Moshe and his father-in-law Yisro, Moses and Jethro, or Moses and Chovav. And we said that Moshe is trying to convince his father-in-law to hang out with them, because Moshe knows, and already knows from a previous story, how important it is to have a different perspective on life, how important it is to have a different perspective on the world and on people, and how even a Moses could use a consultant. And each of us, the takeaway is, each of us, we should not try to do it alone and not try to chart our own paths exclusively. We should bring people in and consult and ask questions. The Rebbe had a very strong campaign called Aseh Lecha Rav, which means have a mentor. Have someone that you trust, that you can bounce ideas off of, and you trust them that they'll be honest with you and tell you, good idea, bad idea, kosher, not kosher, right? Healthy, not healthy. Have someone in your life that you can trust, that you can ask and you can consult. Even a Moses needs a consultant. You and I certainly need a consultant. And it's a mitzvah to have I don't know if it's one of the 613, but it's a good thing. It's a very good practice. And it comes from Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, Aseh Lecha Rav, to have someone in the capacity of a mentor to help us. It also says Kanei Lecha Chaver, which means make sure you have a good friend also. So you need a good friend to share, to empathize, etc. But you also need someone that can guide. It doesn't have to be someone, don't make that position so great and lofty that you can't find someone qualified to do the job. The main qualification is it's not you. Someone that has a different perspective and someone that will be honest with you. That's the main criteria for that position. The next piece we spoke about was the 3-day journey from the mountain. We journey from Shabbat for 3 days and journey to Shabbat for another 3 days. And in that way, we live the whole week with Shabbat, with the energy of Shabbat. And that's a good thing, because Shabbat's a great energy. And finally, the last point we mentioned is the idea that the ark of the Lord was 3 days ahead of the people, and the message is Torah is always ahead of its time. We're here, right? Wherever we are, Torah is far ahead. Torah's already anticipated our questions, our dilemmas, our conundrums. Torah already has guidance. It's up to us, though, to unpack it and to take it into our lives. Never keep Torah in your mind. Never keep Torah as some antiquated, some Baba Maisa, some fairy tale that was told 3,000 years ago. Recognize that Torah is absolutely relevant, and not only relevant today, but already relevant tomorrow. We're just not there yet. Okay? So that's what Torah is. Have Torah, will travel. Let's enjoy the Torah. I want to mention one more thing that's not necessarily mentioned literally in this text. The ark would carry itself. I don't know if you know this. There were poles, and the Levites kind of had it on their shoulders, but the ark, they didn't feel the weight. The ark carried itself. And that's a message for us also, that Torah takes away a lot of the burden from us. Like the monkey on our back, so to speak. Life creates pressure. Just going through life, there's a lot of pressure on us. But when we're connected with Torah, it alleviates it that much. It takes away a lot of the burdens of Torah. As it says in Pirkei Avot as well, if somebody accepts the yoke of Torah, then the yoke of the world, the yoke of materialism is taken away from them. Okay, that's it for today. Sandrine, I see you have a question or a comment.
Yes.
Fire away, please.
I wanted to know, for the 3 days, is it why we can do Havdalah until Tuesday?
Yes, that's exactly correct. The reason why we can do, if you didn't do Havdalah Saturday night, you can do it up until Tuesday, or through Tuesday. The reason is because the energy of Shabbat is still influencing the first 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so it's still the energy of Shabbat, and you can still do the Havdalah. And by the way, this is why, in our prayers, where's my handy dandy Siddur? Do I have one handy? I do. Hold on one second.
We hope you do.
I know. No, I have a lot of books around, but it's just having the right one in arm's reach, which I do, apparently. Take a look. There's a song, I should mention, there's a song for each day of the week. It's basically a psalm, a prayer that the Levites would sing. Oh, I mentioned this a few days ago, right? During the service that the priests would do, the Levites would sing songs. Well, what would they sing? Like, what are they singing? Bob Dylan? Bon Jovi? I mean, what are they singing? No, they were actually singing Psalms. They were singing the book of Psalms. Now, you might say, well, the Psalms wasn't written until King David's time, so what were these Levites in the desert singing? Maybe they were also anticipating this. But here's the deal. Every day has a song. The song for Wednesday, if you have a Siddur, and Sandrina, it looks like you have one, 73, page 73 is Wednesday's song. Remember, Tuesday is where the cutoff ends. Wednesday begins anticipation for the next week. If you look at page, the bottom of page 73, the last line. Okay? Look at the last line. There's a verse that begins, the second word, L'chu niranna l'Hashem. You see that at the bottom of page 73? Let us sing to the Lord. Mm-hmm. That is the opening prayer for the Kabbalat Shabbat service on Friday night. L'chu niranna l'Hashem. That's how the prayer begins. On Wednesday, the song of the day, we append 3 verses from Psalm, where is it from? From Psalm 95. The first 3 verses from Psalm 95. We append. I just want to be very clear here. The song of the day for Wednesday is Psalm number 94. So we read the whole Psalm, and then we read the first 3 verses of Psalm 95, which happen to be the Psalm, the verses that begin the Friday night prayers, the Shabbat prayers. So there's your answer. On Wednesday, in our prayers, we start singing about Shabbat. I hope that's coming across clear. You know, I know not all of you have the Siddur, but the point is that on Wednesday, we add 3 extra verses, a song for Shabbat already on Wednesday. So that's the Havdalah on Tuesday and the singing Shabbat on Wednesday already is enough indication for what we spoke about today, which is the idea that we're either coming from Shabbos or going to Shabbos, but either way, it's all Shabbat. And I'll tell you that our sages tell us that when Mashiach comes, It's going to be Yom Shekulo Shabbat. It's going to always be Shabbat. In other words, that beautiful, serene, pleasant, peaceful, spiritual, loving, kind energy of Shabbat is going to permeate the entirety of existence at each and every day. But listen, even before Mashiach comes, you and I can do our best in our own little circles, in our own lives, to get as close as we can to the energy of Shabbat. And then I don't mean not to work. What I mean is work, but keep your head connected with Shabbat. Maybe you have to work with your hands, but no one ever said that your head has to be completely inundated, in weekday mundane matters. Yeah, you have to think about your job also, fine, but keep your head also a little bit out of it. I'll actually end up with a story along these lines. There was once a chassid of one of the Chabad rabbis, a disciple, a student, who was in the galoshes business. You know what galoshes are? Yeah, boots. He was in the boots business. In Russia, you needed boots. Everyone wore boots. You ever see those boots that go, for at least I know for men they have them, they slip over your other shoes? Those rubber, you slip them over? Maybe that's what he was making over there in Russia. I don't know if they had Goodyear rubber then, whatever he was doing. So he would make boots. And he came to his Rebbe, to his teacher, to his spiritual guide, and I guess he was talking about the business a lot and asking things about the business. So the Rebbe says to him as follows. He says, look, a foot in galoshes, or feet in galoshes, that I've seen many times. But a head in galoshes, come on, you can do better than that, right? To put your head in the galoshes, that you don't need to do. Keep that for your feet. You need to work, you need to make money, fine. But keep your head a little bit above the fray. That's healthy always. So keep your head in the Shabbat spirit, and the rest will follow in a bit of a better way. Thank you all for joining me today. I will let you all go. I know it's a little bit late. It's great to see you all. It's great to study the daily portion together. Tonight, a reminder, tonight at 8 p.m., we have our weekly Tanya class called Think Different. If you want to think the same, no problem. But if you want to think different, then join us tonight at 8 p.m. Look for the Zoom link online, intownjewishacademy.org. There should be, under weekly classes or something, or courses, there should be Think Different. Click on it, and it'll have the link to join, intownjewishacademy.org. Otherwise, reach out to me. All right, it's great to see you all. Have a great day. Hope to see you later. Oh, and don't forget tomorrow, tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel. We'll talk about the scandal with the quail and the meat. And then on Sunday, we have a very special Jewish fireside chat. And the topic of the fireside chat is everything I know about happiness I learned from sadness, with Mrs. Shane D. Jacobson, 7 p.m. That's going to be very, very special. Okay, that's it for today. That's it for now. Great to see you. Have a wonderful day. Keep your head out of the boots. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Be well.
Have a good day.